From law to lived reality, implementing gender justice across jurisdictions. This is the topic of the panel. Implementing gender justice in Pakistan involves bridging a significant gap between a progressive legal framework on paper and the lived reality of women, which is often constrained by deeply entrenched patriarchal norms, weak enforcement, and legal pluralism. While the Constitution of Pakistan guarantees equality and empowers the state to make special provisions for women, Articles 25, 34, 35, the practical application of these laws is challenged by socio-cultural pressures, low legal literacy, and systemic inefficiencies. So we are here today to discuss what has happened so far in Pakistan, and also we have among us August guests. We have Rabiya, Javeri, who is the Chairperson of National Commission for Human Rights. Then we have Shaista Pervaiz, who is a parliamentarian, and then we have among us Her Excellency Isabelle Rome, who is the Ambassador for Human Rights from France. And then we have among us Her Excellency Irina Schoulgin-Nyoni, Ambassador for Human Rights, Democracy, and the Rule of Law from Sweden. So I welcome all of you, and I thank you for agreeing to be a part of this panel, and I hope that we will be able to learn from all of you and your experiences as on gender, and also gain insights on how to make it better for Pakistan across the jurisdictions. So thank you. First, I would like to request Ms. Shaista Malik what she thinks about gender justice across jurisdictions. And there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you, but before that, I'd like you to share your insights. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on the panel. And I feel gender is something which is very, very important for me, or for everybody sitting here, or for our party, PMLN. I think gender is the most important thing, because when there is gender rights, they are the basic human rights, I feel. And when women get accessibility, equality, and justice, societies and countries progress. And when societies progress, countries progress, and I feel it is a very important issue, and it should be in the mainstream, which our government at the moment is. So I think as far as the government of ours is concerned, we have done a lot of work in gender mainstreaming, and we consider gender an important and integral part of the legislation which we carry on in the country. So if we can start with some...
I'd like to request Ma'am Rabiya Javeri to also share her insight regarding the topic. Thank you.
No.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'm going to just share a statistic, and then I'll let you all decide. 90% women in Pakistan have faced harassment or abuse. 50% don't even know there's a law that talks about harassment, that criminalizes harassment. 11 women a day are raped. 3% is the conviction rate for rape. Now you decide this picture. Tell me, what is the story we're talking about? We're talking of lack of awareness, and we're talking about extremely hard processes in accessing justice. And that's the question I think we need to talk about today. So thank you.
Now I would like to request Her Excellency Isabelle Rome to share her insights regarding the issue. Thank you.
So thank you. It's an honor for me to speak before you today, and I would like to thank you for your invitation. I'm the French ambassador for human rights. I previously served as a magistrate for nearly 30 years, as a senior official in the Ministry of Justice, and as Minister for Gender Equality, Diversity, and Equal Opportunity. I quickly understood from my early years as a magistrate the importance and scope of human rights, beginning my career as a judge responsible for the enforcement of sentences in Lyon in an overcrowded prison. However, it was over the years that I really came to understand the issues surrounding gender equality, and as president of a criminal court, the seriousness of violence against women. This violence has profound repercussions, not only on gender equality, but on society as a whole. It is a real disaster. France has chosen a legal approach to guarantee women's emancipation. The second half of the 20th century was marked by a succession of laws that allowed women to enjoy greater freedom and autonomy. The right to vote in 1944, but the right to work without their spouse's consent and to have a bank account in 1965, the right to access contraceptions a few years later, and finally the decriminalization of abortion and the right to abortion under certain conditions in 1975. These fundamental legal advances were then accompanied by measures designed to ensure women's equal participation in political and economical life. True equality cannot be achieved without eradicating violence against women. I repeat always that. As measure co-championed by the President of the Republic during his 5-year terms, the fight against gender-based violence gained new momentum in 2017. As the senior official responsible for gender equality at the Ministry of Justice, I had the opportunity to coordinate the Grenelle on domestic violence, which resulted in a comprehensive and effective action plan made possible by the cooperation of government agencies, associations, grassroots actors, and victims. However, women's rights cannot be taken for granted. What one law can do, another law can undo, and the task now is to protect and perpetuate them. The inclusion of the right to abortion in the French Constitution on March 8, 2024 is a significant step. The aim of presenting France's approach to gender equality is not to lecture, but rather to share expertise, establish constructive and open dialogue, particularly in the context of bilateral relations, and share best practices. I remain at your disposal for any questions you may have on these topics.
Thank you. Now I would like to request Her Excellency Irina Schoulgin-Nyoni to share her perspective on this topic. Thank you.
So thank you so much. It's really a pleasure and honor for me to be here, not only on this panel, but at this interesting conference. I really so far enjoyed it very much and all the different discussions and meetings that I've had. I am the ambassador for democracy, human rights, and rule of law. And apart from being an extremely long title, it also sort of shows that somehow these three areas really belong together, that they are sort of interconnected and interdependent. So it basically, if you do not have human rights, you will fail on the other two. And that rule of law and democracy and human rights really come together. And I believe that when we discuss issues like, for example, women's rights, this also becomes very evident. Because just as my fellow panelist here was mentioning, that somehow the mainstreaming of human rights is something that we still seem to fail at managing. So even if we know that all human rights, whether it's social, economic, cultural, political, civil, they all are also interconnected. And if you don't respect all of them, then you will not achieve any of them. And I believe that in the world we live today, where it seems like politics is more about creating division than creating societies where we can work together, all of a sudden, again, we are back at a situation where attacking the rights of women has become a way of creating these divisions. So somehow, it still is a situation where women's rights becomes an emotional issue that gets a lot of politicians and others and societies going in a way that is very unhelpful. It's very unhelpful, of course, for the women that are under attack, but it's also extremely unhelpful for your societies. And this we see globally, all over the world. It's the same trend. And I think it's true that the theme of the panel today is more specifically on gender justice, but I do believe that actually that is what we are facing today. The gender justice is something that involves all of us, and we don't see the links to politics and the way that we are heading with more populism and nationalism and all of this. I think we are sort of shooting a little bit beside the target.
My question to Madam Shaista Pervaiz is that it has been said that the PMLN government have integrated international standards of gender mainstreaming into domestic laws. What is your take on it? Do you believe what they have done is effective so far? Thank you.
Yes, I do think that PMLN government have made a conscious effort to align Pakistan's domestic legal framework with international gender equality standards, particularly those flowing from CEDAW and the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 5, gender equality. But I feel alignment and effectiveness are not the same thing. Integration, yes, international standards are visible in the law. If we look at the legislation passed or strengthened during the PMLN tenures, especially in Punjab and at the federal level, we do see the language and the logic of international gender mainstreaming clearly reflected.
There was a shift from morality to rights-based framing. Recognition of state responsibility, not just private wrongdoing. Emphasis on prevention, protection, and redress, not only punishment. A move towards institutional mechanism rather than ad hoc response. And as we all know sitting here, the laws on workplace harassment, violence against women, rape law reforms, and I would be proud to say that I was part of the rape reforms that were formulated. And protection orders all echo international norms around due diligence, survival, central, justice, and equality before the law. From a legislative drafting perspective, this represents real progress. Pakistan today is not legislating in isolation from the world. It is clearly borrowing from global standards. So I think we are moving in the right direction. But where the problem begins, gender mainstreaming stopped at the statute level. Where I would be more cautious is on effectiveness. international gender mainstreaming is not just about what the law says, it is about how the state functions, and here the results are missed. True gender mainstreaming requires, and that is gender responsive budgeting. You know, it's the budget which is very important, and this is where we lack. We don't plan in our budget for gender mainstreaming. And we, as I am the convener of the SDG task force, we are trying to work, and we've started work from now to start and align our budgets with the gender mainstreaming budget also. So let's see, we are hoping. Data systems that capture gendered harm. The data is not very clear and available. Institutional incentives that reward protection and prevention. Accountability when the system fails women and girls. I mean, there's no accountability. In Pakistan, including under PMLN, this translation from law to administration has been partial and uneven. And it's not something to be proud of, but that is the fact. Many institutions still treat gender justice as a social welfare issue, not a governance obligation. A project, not a permanent state function. A woman's ministry issue, not a whole of government responsibility. And that is not the way gender mainstreaming actually what it requires. The court, sorry, I'm having a little problem. I have my glasses, but I hope. The court tension, modern laws, traditional power structures. There is also a degree structural conditions. While laws have been modernized, proved, relations on the ground have not changed at the same pace in many settings. Information justice system override formal rights. Economic dependency silences legal remedies. Political and social pressure discourages enforcement. Women are expected to compromise for family honor or social behavior. And this, you know, I think, Rabiya, you will bear me, that it is the compromise between families, between relatives, which is the main cause of the hindrance in providing justice. No amount of international language in a statute can overcome this unless the state actively disrupts these power structures. And the disruption requires political will. I think the will is there now. Often the law is passed not just to applause when it is passed. Now women are very active. We have a very active women parliamentary caucus, and we at the SDGs level is also having an oversight and looking into it. Fair assessment of PML record is, so any assessment would be, did PMLN integrate into an international gender norms into domestic law? This is the most important thing. Yes. More than many previous governments and often in difficult political environment, we have done this and we have taken it forward. And now the next question should be that, did the integration automatically translate into these equality? Again, I would with a heavy heart say no, because laws were not consistently backed by environmental enforcement capacity, financing, data, and accountability. I think accountability, data, all these finances, all these are very important to have assessment to and have the ultimate results with how have the laws progressed. Was the effort meaningless? Absolutely not. As I have explained that yes, we are trying and we are trying to give in our input and with the help of international community also, with the international laws also, we are trying to look into it. But we should be honest, gender mainstreaming was treated more as a legislative achievement than as a long-term governance transformation. We have now a gender mainstreaming committee also in this assembly, which is overlooking all these issues and to see how women are represented in different statutes of the governments. What effectiveness would actually look like? If integration were truly effective, we would see budget explicitly linked to gender outcomes, district administrations, evaluation on protection, indicators, police and prosecution. This is a very weak part of our system which needs to be strengthened. Police and prosecutors penalizes for non-compliance. They should be penalized. Comparable data across provinces on violence, early marriage and access to justice. Survivors experiences protection as predictable, not discriminatory. I think if these issues are tackled and looked into, it will give a better picture. But the present government is trying, having all those challenges and having those political pressures, we are moving forward, and I am hopeful next year when we'll be sitting here, I'll not be able to say that this is no one, this is right. It will be yes, all round. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to request Madam Rabiya Javeri to talk about how NCHR has contributed to public awareness and institutional understanding of women's civil and political rights in Pakistan.
So really, just to be very brief, the commission, और मैं उसमें बात करती हूँ, आपको सबको समझ आए, commission के पांच responsibilities हैं. We have a legislative mandate, so we guide the government which law is good, which law is bad, which law needs to be in position. हमने क्या domestic violence bill, I'll speak back and forth now, right? The domestic violence, age of marriage, the torture act, Pakistan had ratified that, but we had no torture act. How do we spread awareness? हम आगाही कैसे देते हैं लोगों को, बच्चों को कि आपके क्या आपने कैसे, how do you need to move forward? And awareness and advocacy. So in the work that we did, we looked at laws. So we looked at all the laws I mentioned: domestic violence, torture, age of marriage. The age of marriage had been signed. I had helped draft it in Sindh in 2012. It was passed in 2025 in Islamabad. How do we guide the government? Look, we don't play the game. Like if you play football, we don't play football. We are like the referees. We tell the government what should you do, what should you not do, right? So for instance, in policy, what does the government need to do to make policy better? I'll give you all just a simple guide here. Women sitting here, do you know the Nikah which you sign when you get married? Column 17 and 18 talks about your right to divorce and your right for maintenance, which is mentioned in the Quran. Your right to claim your separation from your husband. And do you know that 91% of registrars will cut that out? They will deny you your right that God has given you. So these are policy interventions. How do you tell the government, hey, make this a criminal offense if anybody says to you, cut out this column, your husband doesn't need to give you maintenance, or you can't take divorce, the government has to criminalize it so registrars don't have that power to change the way you move or your agency or your power. We handle complaints as a civil court. We handle many complaints, over 9,000 complaints. Then what do is we also have the power to go into a court proceeding. So I'll give an example. You may all remember that horrible video of Usman Mirza in which he raped this couple. And he raped them, the video became viral, everybody was really upset. And they went to court, they filed a case of rape against him. And exactly as Shaista said, 5 months after the case was registered, they said, no, it's not Usman Mirza. So this is somebody else. So we went to court and we said, we're going to become a party. Even if people don't have the courage, but this is the job of the commission, to become a party. So when we became a party, then they got panicked and the woman said, you know what, this is not me. She backed out completely. But Usman Mirza did get a life sentence. And what I'm trying to say to you is that this thing that Shaista has talked about, which is compromise. You all know Adil Baloch was killed by her brother as an honor killing. And he was sentenced to life. And the mother and father compromised. And he was out of jail in 6 months. And the audacity of the man who came out of jail with a victory sign. And you thought, whoa, he just killed one of the most young, outspoken women of our country. And he comes out with a victory sign. So, you know, these are the different areas. We're not the government, but we intervene in areas that I don't want to go out of my. Do I have 2 minutes? Yeah. I'll give you an example, which is now my baby. It's my case. So one day we received a call from a woman who said my roommate has been kidnapped, and okay, where is she? She's housed in a rehabilitation home on the outskirts of Islamabad. So my members went and they rescued her, they came back and they said, ma'am, we found her. So I said, well, was she something wrong with her? I said, no ma'am, she's an MPhil student. So, is she underage? She said, no, she's 34 years old. She works for a multinational company and she was imprisoned in a rehab home. So I said, whoa, the case isn't finished. It started. We called everybody. We called the police, we called the health ministry, we called the girl. And the girl said, ma'am, I was doing a presentation for my boss. And these 2 men and 1 woman barged into my apartment. My mother ran away. My roommate got scared and hid in a corridor. And they said to me, you're mad, come on with us. She said, I'm not mad. I said, no, you're mad. And she said, ma'am, they jumped on me. I was in my night dress. They jumped on me. They gave me an injection. And I don't know anything, but I woke up in a little room and I was imprisoned. And they gave me then tablets, which I didn't take, and then they would search my mouth, and then they would give me the psychotropic drugs, and I was out again. And then one day they woke me up and they gave me a pink tracksuit and they said, go and play badminton. And so she said, I played badminton and somebody was videoing me. And then they brought me to the room, they drugged me again and I went to sleep. And the next thing I knew, you guys are here. And so I said, who put you in? And she said, my mother. And the mother said, ma'am, she doesn't get married. She doesn't listen to us. I went to a doctor, he said she's depressed. So he said, let her in a very good center, it looks after her, and they sent me a video, she's happily playing badminton in a tracksuit. And I didn't know, ma'am. So we said, whoa. So we started to investigate these rehab homes. We did a public ad, and if any of you know anybody like this, please come to us. We discovered 9 girls in just Islamabad. One was a Supreme Court lawyer who was declared mad by her brother because he wanted her property. One was a girl who had been raped by her brother who declared her mad. She worked in an advertising firm. We called women, do you know any woman that this was a new form of patriarchy. You don't like your wife, she's not listening to you, don't like your sister, declare them mad, send them off to these homes, pay a little bit of money and they're gone. And I approached Shaista, and I have to tell this, and said, Shaista, we need to regulate it. And I have to acknowledge this woman who said, I'm here for you. Whatever we can do, we will try and fix the system where they are now using these homes to stop a woman from saying no to marriage, no to whatever X, Y, Z. So I want to bring to light this is some of the kind of work we do. So it's a small case, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you find out there's health ministry involved, there's regulation which is loose, there's lack of proper legislation. Then you have to call all your friends from Parliament, from the health ministry to say, how do we do it? So it's a little case the commission does, and then it becomes bigger. And I've talked too much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing to light all these violations that are happening and the way patriarchy is at play. This is something that has been happening, continues to happen in Pakistan as well as other countries in South Asia especially. Right to marriage is something that is denied to young women, and the family tries to have their say, and they resort to all sort of, coercion tactics, coercive tactics to force them to get married when they think she should. So thank you for that. I'd like to ask Isabelle, Her Excellency Isabelle Rome. First of all, I'd like to thank her for the soul-stirring New Year greeting that she had on her Instagram account. Secondly, I'd like to know, as the youngest judge in France at the age of 23, how did a gender-based violence case help shape your illustrious career?
Working on gender-based violence cases happened much later in my career, and many cases shaped my commitment to fighting such violence. For example, I remember Madeleine, 75 years old, who spent 50 years of her life with an abusive husband. He hit her, humiliated her, and forced her to sleep in the basement. When she was 17 years old, her children helped her realize how serious her situation was. She reached out to a local women's rights organization, filed a complaint, and found an appointment. I met with her a few months later. She looked radiant. I asked her if she could find a few moments of happiness. I didn't dare ask her if she was already happy, but she told me. But yes, I am happy, really. I remember Leila, a mother of 3 children, very little. She was brutally hit every night by her husband in front of her children. He would tie her wrists with electric cables. Her body was found one morning with a hammer next to it. The police investigation revealed that she was smothered to death with a pillow, and that their husband then raped her lifeless body. I remember Leila's picture. She was wearing a gorgeous lace dress. She was smiling. She looked beautiful. For Leila, for Madeleine, for every woman I met in my courtroom, and for those I only met through pictures, because it was great, and I judged murders. I'm fighting, and I will fight until my last breath against this violence.
My question to Her Excellency Irina is, emerging technologies can either empower women or reinforce inequalities. What safeguards or regulatory approaches are needed to ensure that digital transformation supports rather than undermine gender justice? Thank you.
So, thank you for the question. And I think, in a way, we see, of course, how there is a lot of new challenges that comes with this sort of digital transformation that we're seeing. I think we just need to recall that whatever happens sort of in our digital, in the social sphere of the digital world, is also a mirror of what happens in our society overall. So how our societies looks like and how we respect or do not respect our neighbor will be seen also in the digital sphere. So I think yes, of course, you can see that there are a lot of opportunities that comes with these developments, and there are a lot of challenges. But I think we do come back to what my fellow panelists have also alluded to, that if we have a society where everyone is respected, then we will have less challenges in that sphere as well. So in a way, we can't really blame, we can blame the tech companies, and we can blame the ones that make, of course, these sets up, how it functions and all of that, for sure. But I think in general, when it comes to gender equality, it's not going to be either changed or not changed because of what we do in the social media sphere. It's much deeper rooted than that.
Human rights activists and women journalists, they're really suffering in Pakistan. And for some of us, it is life-threatening to be online. And I hope the government can do something to change that. Thank you. My question to Ma'am Shaista Pervaiz is that having worked as convener of the Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals, in your opinion, how well has the government implemented laws to end gender discrimination across jurisdictions in Pakistan? Thank you.
I think it is fair to say that PML governments have made a conscious, effort. And as convener of the task force on SDGs, I would say that Pakistan has built a sizable legal architecture for gender justice, but it has not operationalized it evenly or reliably across jurisdictions. In many areas, the law now points in the right direction. The left experience still often points elsewhere. The headline, stronger laws, uneven implementation, that is our problem. Over the last decade plus, Pakistan has enacted and updated key laws meant to reduce gender discrimination and gender-based violence, particularly around harassment and sexual violence. Workplace harassment, the Protection Against Harassment of Women in the Workplace Act 2010, with later amendments, provides a nationwide framework and complaint mechanism, which is now in place. We have a Women in Birdsperson office also. There's NCSW also watching over how things are progressing. And as mentioned, the task force is also, we have a special convener on Goal 5, which is overlooking, and they have an oversight and they see where the gaps are, and we try to connect the executive, the missing links with the gaps we have in the legislation. And we are trying, as Rabiya mentioned, that I've been working, she guided me, she leaded me to work on mental health. And it's 2 years now. I am still working because the problem in our executive system is there are overlapping institutions. We have allied health, which looks into it. Then we have the regulatory authority that looks into it. And I'm trying to differentiate and make them understand that there are gaps and there are loopholes in the mental health legislation, not in the legislation, but in the execution part, which we are trying to sort out. So I just wanted to take this opportunity and tell you, Rabiya, that the work is in progress. There's a big sign and it's now really near completion. It's now nearly on completion. So in lawmaking, there has been real movement. The core challenge is implementation, capacity, institutional coordination, and social enforcement. And these vary dramatically by province, district, and even by police stations or courtrooms. Across jurisdiction is the whole story. Devolution created progress and fragmentation. After devolution, provinces legislated more, but implementation became a patchwork. And you can see these three realities in Pakistan. A better designed models exist where institutions were built, not just laws. Punjab is an example that it made a one-window operation which became an integral protection system, Women Protection Authority. Pathway from complaint, protection, legal aid, shelter, medical support, not just punishment on paper. You know, this was made in Pakistan and it's still there in Multan. Laws exist, but the service chain is weak. And this is where we step in as conveners on different goals, that we see how it can be made stronger and how we can take it forward. In several places, survivors still face delays and drop-offs. And delays are also one of the very big point, you know, when there's delay in sexual violence, you know what the consequences are. And drop-offs, medico-legal, bottlenecks, weak investigation, pressure to settle, and lack of safe referral systems. This gap is documented in service access studies and GBV response analysis, and this is again where the task force and the legislators, they intervene and come forward and make and try to bring in some reforms so that they can be expedited. Some negotiations face a parallel justice problems that overrides the law, as we have the jirgas, as we have the formal courts. These are the issues and the challenges, but the present government also, and this is something which we are trying to handle.
Thank you. We started at 12:15. So I hope we can take the liberty to end at 1:15. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I have to ask Madam Rabiya Javeri, what role does NCHR play
in supporting the implementation and oversight of provincial laws addressing child marriage and violence against women? Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, we're not an implementing agency. We oversee the government and what the government does vis-a-vis implementation. So Pakistan is a highly over-legislated country. We have too many laws. There was a study done by the Legal Aid Society. 42% of lawyers don't know those laws exist. We have too many institutions. One institution, another institution, third institution. We have too many helplines. I know I once had a case of a woman who lost a child. And she said, "Bibi, main kahan jaun? 15, 115, 1213, 114. I mean, for God's sakes, people are lost in the plethora of information that is coming out in this country. We need to downsize, we need to make it simpler. We've got torture law, but the torture law says now FIA will do the torture. The rules now say police and FIA will do torture, NCHR will do oversight. There's a lot of confusion from the side of the user. You people are young, you know the user, it has to be user-friendly. So we're not user-friendly. So as Shaista said, you have a lot of laws, but they're not implemented. And sometimes they're not implemented because there's no supply chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes they're not implemented because people actually don't want them to be implemented. So I give you an example of the domestic violence bill. The domestic violence bill was passed in 2013 in Sindh. Sindh is generally quite progressive with these kind of laws. The first, and I've said this before, I keep quoting this, I'm sure whoever's heard it. The law, it took 6 years for the first conviction under that law. The lawyer was Saadia. And when the judge did it, he said, "Look, I don't believe domestic violence is a public issue. I believe it is a private issue. But because there's a law, I'm forced to kind of give the favor and the person's verdict in that favor." So I think it's not really about laws or institutions or about, it's about mindsets. Pakistan is deeply it's infiltrated patriarchal mindset. There is what we call the weaponization of morality. I don't like what she's wearing, let's shoot her out. I don't like how she's speaking, let's kill her. So the weaponization of morality, which comes from this deep-rooted patriarchy. And I keep saying I'm not worried about 1 case or 2 cases or 3 cases. I'm worried about how this mindset seeps into the way police investigate. It seeps into the way the courts, you lawyers, you perceive cases in the court system, the way judges look at cases. So when this mindset changes the way institutions work, that's where it becomes very difficult. It doesn't become about law implementation, it becomes how to change the mindset of that judge who says, "Main to sununga hi nahi case." Like, "Oh, ye to case ko suna hi nahi." So how do we change that mindset? And that means going back in time. It's not making more laws, making more institutions, one another, all that nonsense. I don't believe in that. And that means education. 10, 11 million women in Pakistan do not have a Shanakti card. They don't exist. Tomorrow they die, you don't know who they were. They don't exist. So how do we make systems where you bring the women up, but you also teach society to respect those women who, for instance, don't have a Shanakti card and don't exist? So it's about bringing in systems and changing mindsets, and not what we can do to implement whether one domestic person is sentenced or not. So, in the bigger picture, thank you.
I agree with you completely, because I remember when Noor Muqaddam was killed in a very heinous manner, all the public would talk about was how come she was in his house for 3 days. Was she living with him? That was the question they were obsessing about. They were not that concerned with the way she had been forcibly restrained, the way she was murdered mercilessly. That was not bothering them as much as how come she was in his house for 3 days when she was not married to him. So this is so terribly sad, and but we have to grapple with it non-stop. Coming back to the discussion, I would like to request Her Excellency Isabelle Rome to let us know how her extensive background in the judiciary assisted you in implementing policies for equality and human rights. Thank you.
So, as magistrates, we are confronted with extremely complex situations that constantly challenge us. I would say that in this situation, I have been guided by two compasses: the law and the respect for human dignity. The law must establish a clear framework, and public policies must be rooted in the realities of the world. So, you ask me for some examples. So, for example, when I was a judge responsible for liberty and detention, I had to hear people suffering from mental illness and involuntarily hospitalized. I had to help them to decide if they had to be held in the hospital. And I decided to hear them not at the tribunal, but in the hospital. And for me, it was a matter of respect for their dignity. And a year later, the law was changed to take that into account. Perhaps another example, as high civil servant for the Ministry of Justice, I was responsible for coordinating the Grenelle of domestic violence, our national strategy to combat domestic violence, and my experience as a judge enabled me to propose extremely concrete measures rooted in the realities of the world, and for example, specialized courts for domestic violence, anti-approach bracelets for perpetrators, or delivery of protection judicial measures in 6 days, or in case of high danger, in 24 hours.
Thank you so much. My next question is to Her Excellency Irina Schoulgin. I'd like to know that gender justice is a shared global challenge. What opportunities do you see for countries in South Asia and Europe to learn from one another's experiences in translating gender equality laws into effective everyday protection?
I think a lot of wise things have been said. I believe that in the end it comes down to a lot of what was mentioned here about the mindset. And that is something that takes time, but it also takes effort. And it doesn't just come with it. I think we need to, I mean, in my country, for example, we do also have a lot of laws. But they will not be implemented if people in society don't feel trust in the institutions and in the, everything from the police to the courts. So I think that is, building trust in societies, I believe, is really important. And somehow the whole sort of equality, when we talk about equality, do we understand what that means? Equality means everything in society of equal rights, equal opportunities, that we have equal respect for one another's space. There's a lot in that. So somehow the whole of society needs to be devoted, I think, to make this change, to see the value in it. And a little bit, you were mentioning the football and the referee and all that. I think, if you're a soccer team and you have only one striker, one midfielder, two defenders, and probably not a goalkeeper, then your game is not going to be as good as if you have a full team. And I think in the end, that's what it's all about. If all women and men together, if we play together, we will be a much better team. So, I mean, this is not a joking matter. I don't want to, this is extremely serious. But I do believe that in the end, it is that mindset of, we need to be a team to manage this together and to build this trust. And it has to be clear, who is the victim and who is not in certain situations. And we all need to work on creating that trust in our own systems and that we're all equal in front of the law and in each other.
It's 10 past 1, so we have 5 minutes, and I would request if the participants want to ask questions. Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Ambassador. No, my name is Saadia. I'm from Afghanistan. I was the Deputy Speaker of Parliament in Afghanistan on peace negotiation, but now my focus since leaving Afghanistan has been, of course, it has always been since I was born, but more so now on women's rights, because of course Afghanistan is probably a failed case of how what does that mean to be a woman. Listening to all of you, I see that the experience is very different, but there is one thing in common. That the scale of violence might be different, the scale of exclusion might be different, but it's a phenomenon that exists across the world. And I think it's more so now because there is a decline in women political participation, in women participation in peace processes, in protection of women from violence, in allocating resources. And Afghanistan is just an example of that, but it exists. So I would like to say, Ms. Shazia, that our problem across the border from Afghanistan and Pakistan is more or less almost the same. I think I would like to propose that you need to engage more with Afghan women to empower their voices, because the situation in Afghanistan is going to affect the situation in Pakistan sooner or later. Because in Afghanistan, for instance, there were laws, not even laws, they call them laws, but of course there were edicts signed by the leader recently. One of the edicts was signed on the 4th of January, which is a judicial procedure, penal code, basically. It categorizes human beings into 4 categories. Formally, basically, recognizing slavery. One of the articles I would like to say, because I think there are a lot of people in Pakistan who would echo and say, well, this is through Islam, right? One of the articles says, that tazib, like the punishment, is the responsibility of the husband, the owner, and the master. So basically, literally, it gives a human being the value of a commodity to be owned by somebody else. This is the Taliban, and they do it under Islam. Pakistan is an Islamic country. I think we must hold our governments accountable, and it's a universal principle. I'm expecting, my friend from Sweden, of course, with Isabelle, we work very closely. I'm expecting to, make these institutions that are responsible to protect human rights of everybody work. I'm expecting ICJ to be more functional. I'm expecting the UN to be a little more functional. When I look at these meetings where all the men come and decide on our fate, we need to be vocal and raise our voice, because if not, every human being and every woman will suffer the same way Afghan women are suffering today. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to have solidarity meaningfully, not only in words, with one another, because we are the victim today, tomorrow it could be anybody. Listening to these stories, I think we all have that experience. Thank you.
My question is this. We are talking about the gender equality, but we are not talking about the minority females, because it's well known fact that out of 1,000 girls, maximum female belong to religious minority are forcibly converted in Pakistan. But there is no any kind of law. I know there is lot of laws overlapping in the female sector, but for specifically regarding the minority females protection, there is no law. But as for the Constitution Act, there is no discrimination regarding gender, sex, religion, or race. But in the practical form, we suffered because I belong to a Christian community. So there is a discrimination on the basis of religion. So I would like to ask from the panelists, is there any solution? Because two prestigious guests from the other countries. If you put us some light on this critical issue, please.
No, you're absolutely right. There are 1,000 women who are every year forcibly converted, and the author who's sitting behind of a very, very good report on that we did with the Legal Aid Society on the drivers of forced conversion. What is the, sometimes it's just jazba, chalo ek insaan ko Musalman bana do, Jannat chale jayenge, where there's no compulsion in Islam. But yet you're absolutely right. The government has not taken out any law or any thing to prevent forced conversion. And we are also concerned because the age of child is different in Sindh to Punjab. So for instance, and many nikahnamas, when they forcefully convert, don't write the name of the girl. Often the girls who are converted are underage. So the strategy is this, that you take a girl of 16 who is underage in Sindh, cross her over the border, and then get her forcefully converted, and it's always linked to early age marriage. And you have absolutely pointed out that this is something that, and in fact, I like, Malia, are you sitting there? Yes, and that's the author of a very good report which you guys should, and I think this should be answered by the woman who did that research with us, the author of this report. And part of our job is to tell the government that this is what exists, this is the problem that's facing, because it's linked to early age marriage. You get it? And Malia, if you'd like to say, I think you have a question also, but if you'd like to just talk a little about what this young girl is saying. Thank you.
Just to respond to that, we completely agree on all of this as well, and I think this is something Mary Gill has also worked on extensively as well, sitting next to you. I think it comes down to, which actually it also leads to my question, is there not about more administration? Yes, absolutely, a law on forcefully converting Persians has to be there. And I think that's the big question as well, that when is it valid to have a conversion or not? But also a lot of it is administrative procedures, which links to what the panel was saying is how to actually implement the laws. So where it comes to marriage and early age marriage, how much is the local government actually, so we realized all over Pakistan, the persons who register the marriage are not trained in law or religion or fundamental rights or constitutions. Many of them cannot even read and write. There's no accountability of their performance, there's no accountability if they are even registering illegal marriages. There's no accountability for certifications of conversion as well, how legal or illegal there are. So I think there's a lot of administration that can be very critical in stemming this practice as well. Apart from a lot of the prevention mechanisms that we should be doing about economic empowerment and rights and fundamental, ensuring not just not just civil and political rights, but the social and economic rights. I think again and again, and I know Mary has worked on this extensively, is that without that base of empowerment, the vulnerability will always persist and continue. But which actually leads to the question, if I may ask, if I'm allowed to ask the question. I just have two questions as well. One, I had a question which related to accountability to their excellencies as well. If there's any examples that you may have from various your jurisdictions or other jurisdictions that you may have seen. Because of course we have the amazing commissions and standing committees who are doing the best of their ability to try to make sure people are held accountable. But are there any examples that you may have of the police or the prosecution, and especially the judiciary? How do you hold them accountable to actually following the law? We've had recent judgments which have converted rape cases to zina, whereas there's a specific law which says no case of rape shall be converted to fornication, and that no one should get punished for that. And yet, the more senior judgments or courts are still doing this. So if there are any examples that you may have. And for Madam Shaista and Madam Rabiya, there's been a resurgence of a call of having a federal level body looking at women's rights. Because that was devolved with the 18th Amendment to provinces. But again, this inconsistency, as you mentioned, the age, there's been a resurgence of the call of having a federal level women's body. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, maybe I can just start quickly. I think it's one thing that we haven't really touched upon that much when we talk about accountability. I think it's extremely important to link that to look at what are the watchdogs that you have in your society that is going to hold the government or whoever in power to account. And those watchdogs are mostly our independent media, human rights defenders, civil society. So if you do not have a discussion around freedom of expression and the importance of having these watchdogs in your society, then you're also losing out on the accountability side. And I think just as much as we see this sort of pushback against women's rights, we also see very clearly how independent journalists are being, victims of a lot of abuse and also being very limited in the way that they can work. And this is really global phenomenon. So I think we need to also look at those links between our watchdogs and how we safeguard them.
The responses and you spoke about the mindset, and the judges are members of the society, and they must be trained when they implement new laws, because if you take a new law, but if the judges are not trained, nothing will be changed. So I think it's very important. And in the matter of domestic violence, violence against women, so the past years have brought a lot of new knowledge to understand better what are the psychological mechanisms of violence, for example. And when the judges don't know these mechanisms, they don't protect the victims, and they don't punish very well the perpetrators, not in prison but to ask to the perpetrators to go to a doctor, to follow for mental health, for example. And I think that the training is the most important thing after the law. Without training, nothing will change.
Thank you. I would want this to continue non-stop, but I know that there is a time constraint, and because of that, I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out and being with us. And if there are any resolutions that you would like to focus on coming out of this discussion, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.